months. Well, for the first time in 70 years, the federal government is preparing to execute a woman. 50-year-old Lisa Montgomery is scheduled to die by lethal injection at the U.S. Penitentiary in Terre Haute January 12th after the execution was postponed from December 8th because Montgomery's attorneys contracted the COVID-19 virus. Adam Pinsker has more.
On December 16, 2004, prosecutors say that Lisa Montgomery walked into this home in Skidmore, Missouri, and strangled Bobby Jo Stinnett to death, then cut her open and took her baby with her. Now, 16 years later, she's facing the death penalty. Longtime Skidmore resident Cheryl Houston has a clear memory of the day Bobby Jo Stinnett was murdered.
When I came through town, I went straight through to the block where Bobby Jo lived, and Biker Bill DeGrew, he met me on the corner, and I asked him, and he goes, "Bobby Jo's gone."
Stinnett's murder and abduction of her unborn child rocked this small northwest Missouri community of nearly 300 people.
It's probably one of the worst things I'd seen done to a human, maybe.
Randy Strong is sheriff of Nottoway County. At the time of Stinnett's murder, he was an investigator with the Northwest Missouri Interagency Team Response Operation, or NITRO. Hours after the murder, Strong says his investigators came across a huge lead.
That came about by a person that was watching a website for rat terrier dog, some breeding business.
The IP address took them to Melbourne, Kansas, nearly 3 hours away from Skidmore. Strong and another investigator drove to Montgomery's home. When they walked in, Lisa was sitting on the couch watching the Amber Alert issued for the baby, Victoria Jo.
She was very cool about it. She was smiling, holding a baby like you would expect to see a new mother holding a baby.
After calling an ambulance for the baby, who ended up surviving the ordeal, Lisa went willingly with Strong and other law enforcement for questioning about the incident. Strong said Lisa initially lied about killing Stinnett.
We started getting bits and pieces of it, and then eventually she started talking. She told us she acted alone. She told us she brought a rope in her coat pocket, that she brought a knife in her coat pocket. She didn't talk about the actual murder per se, cutting the baby out.
Montgomery ended up in the Wyandotte County Jail in Kansas before being extradited over to Missouri to stand trial for a federal charge of kidnapping resulting in death. Judge Roseanne Ketchmark, who at the time was one of the assistant U.S. attorneys who prosecuted the case, says Montgomery gained access to Stinnett's home under the guise of buying a puppy from the victim.
And the premeditation in this case was so much on what her finger strokes were on her computer on the months leading up to the kidnapping resulting in death, by her targeting and by her specifically preying on Bobby Jo.
In 2007, a jury sentenced Montgomery to death, but one of her attorneys during the appeals process, Kelly Henry, says key evidence about Lisa's mental health was not heard during the trial.
The centerpiece of the pseudosciasis defense was a man by the name of Dr. Ramachandran, who is from India. He is not licensed in this state. It appears that the trial attorney didn't know that because he referred to him as a psychiatrist during his testimony, and the government had to correct him.
Henry, who contracted COVID-19 after visiting Montgomery in prison, says Lisa was raped by her stepfather when she was a teen. Her mother beat her and allowed other men to sexually abuse her.
I would be interested to know what a U.S. attorney thinks about executing a person who was a victim of sex trafficking when that is such a priority for the Department of Justice right now.
Lisa's half-sister, Diane Mattingly, was pulled out of the home by social workers in the midst of all the abuse and says Lisa suffered from the brunt of it.
I see myself as being bruised, but she is broken. And it was just perpetuated over and over and over again. There was no one there that helped her.
A group of 40 former and current prosecutors have written President Trump asking him to commute Lisa's sentence to life in prison. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Adam Pinsker.